Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Hannah Smolinski. Hi, Hannah.
Hello. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. I'm very excited to have you as a guest on this podcast. But before we even dive into why, I want to give a big shout out to Dr. Jeremy Wise from Rise 25, who introduced us. So hi, Jeremy. Jeremy is actually producing this. His company, Rise 25, is producing this podcast. And he's the one that, 2 years ago, I had a conversation with him about starting a podcast. And it's been the best thing for my business in terms of the marketing and in terms of being out there and meeting wonderful guests and wonderful people that I learn a lot from and my listeners learn a lot from. So definitely thank you, Jeremy, and the entire team at Rise 25. And thank you for the introduction. All right, Hannah, so let's now introduce you. So you are a CPA and you are the founder of Clara CFO, which is a CFO a fractional CFO company. We're going to go over in detail what does that mean. But you basically took your experience from working for one of the largest CPA companies and all the best practices and what you learned there to apply it to smaller size businesses so they can also benefit from that expertise and knowledge, but apply it to entrepreneurs, to smaller size entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So
is that correct?
Yeah. I started my career at a Big Four accounting firm. And, I think when you work for such a large firm, they have whole systems that they're using. They have, very established process. I was in the audit practice. So, anytime we went into a new client, we had a list of things to do, and we would just, work through the audit procedures. Now I'm not doing audits, so that's not what we do. But, there is a lot of wisdom that can be taken from, how do you go into each client the very same way and execute so that you can have a consistent deliverable at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So what is a CFO and what is a fractional CFO?
Sure. So CFO stands for Chief Financial Officer. And so this will be the kind of right-hand person of a CEO. This will be the person that's overseeing all of the financial strategy for the business. And I'd say CFOs are really different from maybe some of the other accounting roles because they are really strategic and forward-looking. And that's one of the big things that differentiates it from, let's say, like a controller position or an accountant position or, even a tax CPA or something like that. They're typically focused on historical. And we need that. It's absolutely important. But the CFO is going to take that information and say, okay, this is historical. What's the next steps? What do we need to be doing next? And so that's a real differentiator I see between, high-level accounting roles and then the CFO. And, they're talking at the leadership level as well of, where's the business going from a, visionary directional level. And the CFO is in on those conversations to be able to provide the financial guidance along the way. So like with a fractional, that just really means, and I think you work with a lot of like fractional leadership, you're fractional leadership yourself in a lot of ways. We will say, hey, a lot of companies don't need a full-time CFO and they're very expensive. You're talking about on a low level salary for a CFO could be somewhere around $300,000 a year. And that's for like, a small business salary level. And they can go up to the multi-million dollars in salary, depending on the size of the company. So a lot of companies just really don't need that strategic hat all the time. They need it maybe, for monthly meetings, or maybe a weekly meeting with their leadership team, or maybe they just need, smaller businesses might just need to have a consistent monthly check-in with their CFO. And so we've designed programs and services that are, tailored more to that small business, that just say, hey, we know what you need on a consistent basis, and you certainly don't need to be paying for a full-time CFO. So how can we kind of provide you with just what you need at a more affordable package price?
Absolutely. And, and I've done several podcasts, like the ones that come to mind. It was one with Joe Frost and David Nielsen about this fractional leadership, which definitely helps. It's definitely, well, with David, it was more like how it's a borderless activity in terms of employment, like borderless employment. And with Joe, it was the fractional advisory, which is definitely, and a Dave Waxman as well, in terms of how does fractional leadership work in companies. So for sure, that is a topic that is very much top of mind, and very much the change that we see in the workforce. But that's part of it, is having the ability to tap into resources like yourself with all the knowledge, but not necessarily have to have somebody full time. So I completely agree. Hannah, let's say entrepreneurs are listening to us right now, what signs in the business will tell them that they actually should contact a CFO or a fractional CFO?
Sure. We start to see the need pop up when there starts to be too many moving parts in the business, to where the owner of the business, or maybe, whatever accounting leadership was there, can't really keep track of everything. So we see that with kind of sophistication or complexity. How many employees do they have? Are they growing at a rapid pace? Are they having trouble kind of seeing into the future and what their numbers are looking like? The decisions that they're making are always affecting the financials. And so if they're making a lot of decisions, they're going to have those moving parts, and it becomes more and more challenging to be able to just do that on your own. I mean, we work with a lot of business owners that have really great, just innate business sense. They have an understanding of like, when I sell this, I have these expenses, and I think if I sell enough of this, I will cover these expenses and it'll all be okay. But as you grow locations, or you grow, your leadership team, which can be really expensive, and you start creating more overhead in the business, it starts to become, much more necessary to have somebody looking at the finances from that overarching perspective, and also somebody who's tied into, what is the business, what's the vision of the business and where are they going? So there's lots of different triggers. We start to see some signs, like usually when businesses start to get to a couple $100,000 of annual revenue, sometimes those pain points can start to pop up. And then some businesses will be well into the millions before they feel the need for a fractional CFO. And again, that kind of goes to complexity of the business model.
For sure. So what are some of the decisions that you help business owners make?
Yes. So all the time we're helping people with, and I think this goes partly to that we're working with a lot of service-based businesses, but a lot of it is, how do I afford the people that I need in the business? How do I bring on the next hire, or how do I know if I can afford, raises for my employees? Like, we were just having this conversation with a client yesterday that was, they had 2 people leave on their team of 25, and they want to do like a full compensation review, which we pull in from HR. But then it's like, can we really afford to do a widespread, increase of salaries? It's been a while since they've done it. They're kind of thinking that people are finding better jobs elsewhere. So how do they know if they can increase, everybody to what the current market rate is? So kind of those widespread things. And then we also get into, how do we look at cash flow? I mean, cash flow is like a huge part for small businesses. So we're always helping them forecast cash flow, estimated taxes. How do I plan for estimated taxes? How do I, we're working right now with a business that has multiple locations, and we're working on, does it make sense to have all these locations open? Do we need to strategically pull back Do we need to invest elsewhere? How do we turn around and make the business more profitable? So it all kind of comes down to, at the end of the day, is the business accomplishing what it needs to do? And usually that involves creating profit in the business so that there creates room, and then they can go and, accomplish the things that they want to do. So a lot of it revolves around profitability at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So from your experience, what are the main drivers for profitability that business owners should look at?
Yeah, I mean, profit is always like two sides. You have revenue and you have expenses. So if you have more revenue than you have expenses, then you're going to create profit. So we look at, first, like, what are the revenue opportunities? Is our pricing correct? Do we have, missed opportunity that we could be selling more volume? Do we have the opportunity for maybe something that's adjacent to the services that we're providing that we can increase revenue on? We love working with people who want to develop recurring revenue streams. We love recurring revenue. Always a wonderful thing. So we've been working with some service providers to think, how do we take this service and turn it into a recurring revenue model, which is so fun when that happens. So we look at, where can we increase revenue? And then how do we control costs? Sometimes that's looking at, a lot of it is labor. Almost all of us, one of our biggest items on our P&L is going to be labor, especially if you're in any kind of service business. So how do you make sure that the labor is being efficient and actually producing enough revenue for us? And then, I think it's really easy for a lot of people to look through, a P&L and say, you're spending too much on office supplies, or you're spending too much eating out. Those are kind of like the low hanging fruit of, cut some expenses here and there. But those aren't the things that are going to really move the needle if the business is, not working year after year after year. It's probably more of like a business model question, or, structurally there's something wrong with how the revenue is coming in and how the expenses are going out. So it's it takes a little bit to diagnose the problem, but we've got two levers that we can pull to increase profit. We can pull the lever of revenue and we can pull the lever of expenses. But sometimes it's a little bit of both too.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this recurring revenue stream, right? Because that is definitely something that I know it's top of mind or a desire of a lot of entrepreneurs. So what advice would you give, or some examples that you can give in terms of how do you actually create a recurring revenue when it wasn't there before?
Yeah, and this is something that I think service providers, we get in our heads about, because we think, oh no, we've got projects and we need to do our projects. We need to get paid for our projects. And, this is how you do it. This is how you provide the service over and over. And if I don't provide the service, then I'm not doing the business the right way or something. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities in the service industry to have recurring revenue. So I'll give an example of this client that we were working with. So they provided workshops. So they were doing these big consulting engagements, but they also were finding that their clients were asking for workshops. People that come in, sit their employees down for, 30 to 100 employees at a time, sit them down and take them through a workshop. And it was, on their specialty, and they were able to do all these workshops, but we were seeing all of their revenue shift over almost to these workshops. And then I was asking the questions like, is there any reason that this couldn't be delivered in a different way? Is this really so tailored to the client that, you couldn't also deliver it to this company and this company at the same time? So when we really dug into it, we realized that they have the opportunity to deliver these workshops in a digital format and to be able to have kind of a live interactive component to their service. But they developed basically a whole learning platform that they'd be able to deliver their workshops, which, they did a lot of research, and a lot of kudos to the business owner. She, basically kind of pre-sold or preempted, making sure that what she was building was the right thing, because I think sometimes people can go off and think that it's a great idea. And then at the end of the day, nobody buys it. So she did her research to really understand, like, is this what people would want? And now she's able to sell memberships basically to the clients that were buying her workshops. And she's able to, get that annual recurring revenue in because it's basically an add-on to their employee benefits package, essentially. So really excited for her because it's taking off the pressure of like uniquely designing workshops every single time a client wants them. And then she's able to get that financial leverage too of being able to do that one-to-many opportunity.
I love that. So if we had to create more of a checklist or a process for business owners to look at how to create a recurring revenue stream, what would you suggest? What should they look at first?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think you want to think about what are you doing now for clients that they need regularly. Because I think that's the biggest thing with recurring revenue is you have to think like, are they going to need it again in a month or a quarter or the next year? Like, what is that thing that makes people keep coming back to your business? In our situation, we have a monthly subscription model, and it lends itself really well because the accounting process is a monthly cycle. And every time a new month turns over, you need to review the results and then make decisions. You need to review results and make decisions. So what is that happening in your business? Is there something that can be built that people continually need? I just had a clarity call. We call them clarity calls with clients that are just kind of spot strategy. And she was really having a problem with profitability. But they were a property management company that they would do like projects. So they would come in and repair the fence at an apartment building, or they'd come in and, fix stuff, the plumbing in a certain building, whatever. Property management does like a wide variety of things. Which when we got into it, I was like, there's a huge opportunity for recurring revenue here because there's a service that you could provide that provides like a base level of comfort to your clients. Maybe it means that you're, doing a sweep of their property once a month or twice, 2 times in a month, or maybe you're, spraying for bugs, or maybe you're doing a check on the light bulbs. I don't know. Like there could be a thousand things that could be involved in this like recurring revenue service, but they weren't having any kind of base level relationship with that customer. So they were just only relying on when there was a project, they would do it. And that creates revenue spikes. So then you have, there's no projects. Okay, well, that means we have no revenue. But if they were on property regularly, they could first identify more projects. And then also they would be earning some revenue for just showing up and providing some base level of value to customers. So I think like, what is that thing that you could provide that provides value, but doesn't require tons of time from your people?
So it's what's recurring, what provides value, but it doesn't necessarily, you have to be part of, it doesn't consume your time. So that can be also, for instance, like if you're a service provider, maybe some kind of a monthly membership where you actually add, let's say you are an employment lawyer. So you actually send all the a news, like some news or some updates that happen in the employment law, right? Or some kind of a subscription where people can contact you for that many hours a month if they need your help. Something like that is actually more of a subscription that when there is a need and when it can be recurring. So I agree with you.
Yeah. And I think there has to be a balance there of the perceived value that the customer is getting versus what it takes you to provide it in the price. So, the perceived value needs to be something that the client feels is worthwhile. But when you're doing it, for all your clients, then it starts to become, you can charge, potentially a lower amount, but then when you're multiplying in that times all your clients, like for this one that I was explaining earlier, they had 150 clients. And so they could do something like $200 a month for something really minimal. And that becomes, it was like a $500,000 annual revenue increase, which would, definitely help them get the people that they need, pay their people well, and also create the profit that they needed without a whole lot of extra work on their side. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Any other stories like that you can inspire us in terms of creating that monthly revenue, recurring monthly revenue?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different options, and I think it really depends on the type of the business. I'm trying to think of like some. We've had like physical products where they take things that are they're selling physical products, but then they have the opportunity to have like a digital side that sort of amps up the experience. So, for example, like we have a client that's in e-commerce and they provide like crafting type supplies, but then they are able to create kind of a sort of like DIY, but alongside. So like people would be working on a craft all together at the same time. And so there starts to become like kind of this community, camaraderie, and then it's adjacent to, but it's not poaching anything either from like that product. Because if you took your e-commerce product and you just said, okay, well, instead of people buying things individually, let's package it as a subscription box, for example, you could be poaching your sales. So is there something that you could do that's a little bit, the opportunities are endless, but that I thought was another really brilliant idea that came up, and that was my client. That was not me at all. But I just said, yes, I'm
creative with it. I think the bottom line is that you really need to look at what is the creative thing to do. Really take a look at your services and see where is your revenue stream and how can you create it in such a way that it's repetitive and you can continue the need.
Yeah. And then, always keep in mind, what does the customer need and what is best practice for the customer? Because I've seen failed attempts of trying to create recurring revenue, but really it was never customer driven. It was all company driven. And the only way that you're going to get that, I guess, the flywheel of the recurring revenue really working is when you're delivering something that people really need over and over and over again. And then you're getting that build. Because recurring revenue isn't great if it's not building on itself. I mean, it's okay, but that's where the magic happens, is when it starts to build and you have the longevity of clients or of that revenue coming in.
Absolutely. So when you said that it builds, it builds upon itself in terms of services, or it builds in terms of the number?
That it builds in terms of the number. So for example, that property management service, for example, like they might be able to build their client base, maybe it's 150 right now, but then next year it's 200. And then the next year it's 250. And they can, keep that client base number continuing to grow on itself. But if you were only doing projects every here and there, you could only take on the capacity of what you currently have, and you wouldn't have any extra to sort of continue growing your labor force. And then with subscriptions, you're always going to have the people who actually don't participate. Like the whole gym model, something like LA Fitness or 24-hour fitness, the business model is built on the fact that a lot of people don't come to the gym. So they have recurring revenue, but they're kind of banking on the fact that there's not going to be people at the gym. Like not everybody who has a membership is going to use it.
Right, but I think at some point you run into the phenomena of you are charging people for money, but then you're not delivering to them, right? So that can create a problem as well. Mm-hmm. So I think from my standpoint, it will be much more viable. And I know that, in terms of when you have a maintenance program in an HVAC company or the gym and whatnot, but it would be good to find something that people actually can utilize and use. It goes back to what you said, find the need, right? So find the need and make sure that people are actually utilizing it, because then they're going to continue to utilize it. And I think it will be probably a better proposition than to have people sign up and not utilize it.
Yes. Yeah. Then that'll create unhappy customers, and then you have them fall off and they start, kind of destroying your reputation online, saying that's not worth it. Don't go there. So that customer, that customer focus is going to be critical.
Absolutely. And I think it's also, what I've seen from companies that I work with is that they also have some kind of a relationship manager, right? A loyalty manager, or relationship manager, or loyalty specialist, however you want to call it, that actually encourages people to continue using the product, because I think that is a key in order to continue to create that revenue stream, because you don't want people falling off. You want everybody to continue and grow that particular stream.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Hannah, this has been a great conversation. We actually created a process right here about how to create a recurring revenue stream, which I love. And I love the fact that you can help businesses do that among all the other things that you help them with. So if people want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Sure. So, anybody's free to email me at any point in time. It's hannah@claracfo.com. We also have lots of resources available online. We have a pretty robust YouTube channel with lots of resources there, where I think we're over 50,000 subscribers over on the channel now. And that's Clara CFO Group. And there's lots of resources for everything between optimizing your QuickBooks to, pricing strategies to how much you should pay yourself as a business owner. Lots of different things that we've run into. And for example, that property management company, we're going to be talking to that property management company, and that's going to be our video this week. So having conversations with real business owners is always fun over there. So feel free to reach out.
So they go to YouTube and it's Clara CFO Group.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. And I will include that link in our show notes as well. Absolutely. Check it out. Thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a really fun conversation.
Awesome. Okay, great.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.